Okay, so Spellmonger, Book 13. I feel like trying something different today, so not setting up the video. This book starts somewhat defying my expectations. It was going to be about the third Nemivort attacking, and is more about going on a quest to a non-magical land. Min has to go there for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is they think that's where the Alka-Alon have kept all their, let's just say, arsenal, among other things.
The more we learn about the Alka-Alon, the more they seem like the villains of the story.
And as you can imagine, a person who is known as the greatest wizard of the land going to a place without magic, that has its own unique set of challenges. How does Min get around most of this stuff? Well, true to his patroness, he starts packing heat.
It was like a sign from God.
Yeah, if I were going to describe this in one way to get people to pay attention, it would be wizards with guns. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take that back. If I was going to describe this in one way, it would be this series starts with a goblin attack on a village, one thing leads to another, and an elf rickrolls someone.
We're no strangers to love. You know the rules, and so do I.
I am not kidding, that actually happens in this book. One of the many reasons they're going to this non-magical land is there's a human outpost there from before the Five Duchies, before, well, Perwyn sank. And it was sealed off for a long time and has a lot of old human technology. In case you're somehow watching this without having read the other 12 books, humans in this world are actually from Earth. They came here on a big-ass spaceship and set up a colony. And this outpost here is kind of like one of the last working outposts from that age. 600 years past, things get forgotten. But they do have someone with them who can help them with that. Lalastian, the sorceress of Sarthal Wood, as she is sometimes called. I know I've mentioned her before, but it struck me while I was reading this book that this is kind of an inversion of a common stereotype that you see, or a common trope you see, where a person from a more technologically advanced society, usually a human when we're doing this with fantasy, but ends up becoming enchanted with the more simplistic folk of the forest or of the land. So you'll see this in something like Dances with Wolves. That's all humans, but the technologically advanced United States, and the Native Americans. I think that's kind of an inaccurate caricature of how Native Americans tended to live, but I'm not going to get into that. Becoming enchanted by that and becoming engrossed in that sort of culture. The same thing with Avatar. The what can charitably called Good One. Those stories kind of revolve around that trope. And Lalastian is kind of the exact opposite. She comes from a technologically unsophisticated culture that has a deep connection with trees and plants and everything, but then becomes enchanted by the technologically advanced society that shows up on her doorstep. And really, why shouldn't this be a thing? This was a thing for, one of my known ancestors. So I can't imagine it wouldn't be a thing that happens in a fantasy world where an elf will look at the culture of humans and go, yeah, I really just kind of prefer this one. Anyway, it's an interesting subversion of that trope in some ways. And I like this because it corrects a continuous issue I tend to have with a lot of fantasy, in that there's always an association, and this goes back to Lord of the Rings, technological advancement and the destruction of nature. Whereas in the Spellmonger series, it's kind of the exact opposite. These, tree folk could never heal the Five Duchies, but humans showed up with their technology and were just like, okay, do this, do this, do this, and it's all good. That's a far more realistic understanding of this sort of thing. There's a great YouTuber out there by the name of Baba Brinkman. He does a lot of rap videos around sciencey subjects. I would suggest you listen to his song Tranquility if you got the time. It's kind of the thing I'm talking about. Technological growth tends to lead to a greater preservation of nature, not the destruction of nature. You can see that in, like the United States. The United States advanced technologically very early, early in its lifespan, I should say. And we have like one of the largest national park systems in the world. In any case, yeah, technological advancement allows you to care about nature, and the stuff with Elastian and Perwin and everything is a nice subversion of a lot of tropes that we tend to see in fantasy that are frankly unrealistic. I always find it a bit weird that people will go on and on about the realism of swords and in sword forms and such in fantasy, but then they'll completely ignore the fact that, animals don't work that way. I'm kind of getting off on a tangent, but that is just sort of a refreshing take. And Elastian's whole spiel in this, where she's reintroducing human culture to, humans, is really charming. Seeing her delight at, watching old movies, that are all conveniently within the public domain. It's like watching the Orville over here. And her talk about old music is just incredibly charming. But overall, this story seems to have, an underlying theme of, finding your center, as it were. Finding the one thing in the world that you can count on. And that's a conversation that Min and Alia are having back and forth, where they both see each other as their North Star, as it were. And a lot of the, later plot elements deal with that. I'm not going to spoil too much, but yeah, you'll see what I mean if you read the book. But beyond that, there's a lot of conversations in this book, particularly with the character of Fondaros. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. The Wise, who I think is supposed to be more or less a Gandalf archetypal character, who's, the wandering wizard who trades more in wisdom than he does in actual magic. Him and Min get into a lot of conversations on what the nature of wisdom is and such. For my part, I always found that wisdom was the recognition that I cannot believe anything other than what I have been convinced of. And I have to acknowledge that everyone else is in the same boat as me. They cannot believe anything other than what they have been convinced of. Even if somebody is provably wrong about something, they probably have a lot of reasons, a lot of what they see as good reasons to believe that. And I don't know, that's always just been kind of my beginning of wisdom sort of thing. The recognition that people can only believe what they've been convinced of, and that I shouldn't try and judge them morally for believing something that I don't agree with. I don't know, I'm kind of getting off topic. But it's a lot of conversations like that, which are fascinating in their way. I think Terry has a good head on his shoulders for this kind of thing.
The only caveat there is the line, "Wisdom does not discriminate between the sexes." The only thing I have to say in response to that is, have you met a teenage boy?
Well, anyway, I would say that this is now probably my favorite book in the series so far. It used to be Necromancer. That was my favorite for a long time. But I think this one overtook it, and that might be just because it's newer. One of the problems with reviewing a long-running series is at this point I think I've said most things that can be said. But yeah, I would totally recommend this. If you normally just listen to the audiobook, I would recommend trying to just read this one if you have some free time, because I think it's that good.
Whereas the use of "What a Wonderful World" really leads to a wonderful moment near the end here and everything, I do have to say, with the Bodie McVote-face phenomenon, I consider something like this to be far more likely to be picked as the, quote, planetary anthem.
Come and join the freak show, there's a place for you.